This is... oh wait, okay. This is my 3D printed Mjolnir prop. Or at least, it's the pieces to it. Let's get making. To start off, I hit everything with an automotive filler primer. This will help take away some of those nasty layer lines left behind by the printer. After all the priming's done, it's off to painting, which normally is my favorite part of prop making. For the hilt, I'm using some cheap paint. I think this stuff is like 95 cents at most stores. It ended up looking really good though. Once I was done with the brown coat, I added a black wash to darken the color. For the trim, the coin looking things, and the pommel, I sprayed each of them with black spray paint. The reason I sprayed them black instead of just painting them gold is because I'm going to use a wax paint called Rub and Buff. It's used to touch up metal furniture, so by design it looks like metal, which really helps when you're trying to get plastic to look like metal. And as long as I don't overdo it, then the base coat of black will still come through, and I won't need to do a black wash over these parts. After painting all these parts, I hit them with a glossy clear coat and then let them dry. This is the first time I've used Rub and Buff, and I have to say I'm very pleased with the result. Now on to the head of the hammer, which you may have noticed splits apart and reconnects with magnet. You may have also noticed that the hilt has a screw on the top. This is because the whole hammer needs to come apart. Why does the whole hammer need to come apart, you may ask? Well, because I need to access the electronics on the inside. That's right, not only is this God of War Mjolnir going to look super realistic, but it's also going to light up and even make sound when swung. But I'm getting ahead of myself, more on that later. For now, let's get back to painting. I hit the head of the hammer with a metallic finish spray paint, then I let that dry. Next I add a semi-gloss clear coat to seal everything together. Once the clear coat was dry, I then added a darker silver finish to the hammer, painting it on this time. Then it was time for a black wash. I went a little too heavy in some parts, but in those areas I quickly rubbed some of the paint off and it turned out pretty good. Now for another semi-gloss clear coat. Because the hilt screws into the top and doesn't get all that tight, when swinging the hammer it tends to unscrew, and since swinging is a pretty important feature for a hammer to have, I need to find a way to mitigate this problem. My solution to this is to add these threaded inserts into the trim pieces. I'm hoping the screws will add just enough friction to prevent the hilt from moving, but not too much to where the screws push apart the magnet. With that being done, I think it's time to assemble the Hammer of Thor.
Every time I use super glue, I get it on my fingers. Every time, without fail.
Mjolnir is so close to being complete. Now all that's left to do is add the electronics. Mjolnir is going to be powered by a Pi Pico, which is this thing right here. It's basically a small computer. Also in this housing is an SD card, an accelerometer, and an amp. I have most of this wired up already. I just need to solder together some LEDs, the speaker, and the battery pack. And the battery pack also needs to get 3D printed. Battery holder printed, I began to wire it up. I ended up running out of white filament while printing, so I finished it up with green PLA. Just to be sure, I'll hook it up to a multimeter to check the voltage, and that's the wrong voltage. I wired up the battery pack wrong. One quick rewiring later, let's check the voltage again, and there we go, 3.91 volts. Perfect. Battery pack and speaker complete, it's time to move on to wiring the LEDs. Because they're water resistant LEDs, I need to strip the outer silicone layer in order to get to the solder pad. After wiring the LEDs, I soldered on the plug that will connect the LEDs to the Pi Pico. In order to make it stand out from the other plug connected to the LEDs, I quickly painted it gold. This way I won't accidentally power the LEDs from the wrong side. In order to spread the light from the LEDs, I'm going to use this packing material, which does a great job of diffusing the LEDs. After cutting the foam pieces to the right size, I hot glued them into the head of the hammer, which was kind of difficult due to the placement of the magnet. Almost time to add the LEDs into the head of the hammer. But before I do that, I need to count each LED so I can let my code know how many there are to control. Now time to add the LEDs into the head of the hammer. I ended up having to go back and hot glue them in due to the adhesive on the LED strips being pretty bad. Here it is, all complete, the Hammer of Thor. Thanks for making it this far into the video. I'm trying to get a new prop build out every Monday, so if this is content you enjoy, please consider subscribing.